All good,
Hi
man.
everyone. We're good. Okay. Um, Hi everyone. Julie Rudolph here from Divergent Rehab and Wellness in Carmel. I am here again with Coach Kyle. Kyle, say your last name again for me, just so
LaJocono.
Giacono, and he's from Freedom Running Club down in Florida. So today I thought we would touch on shoes being the bulk of it, how what kind of shoe you should look for, how much you should rotate. We can kind of go back and forth with our thoughts and then get into equipment we use for recovery or anything else that either of us would typically recommend to someone. So yeah, so let's first let's ask how he's doing because he's got Chicago coming up here
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
couple days. So
Yep. Feeling great. And it's weird at the taper part of it when you're used to that, like, 75, 80 mile week, and now you're down to, doing 30 or so before race day. And it's obviously still gonna be a lot with the race included there, but I'm feeling great. I've got my shoe selection, I've got my hydration carrying selection, my fueling and all that, and things that we can definitely talk about here. But yeah, I'm ready to go for my first Chicago.
awesome. You got your like wardrobe all picked out and
Some options depending on how it is, temperature on race day. But yes, I do have a couple different ones to choose from depending on the weather situation.
awesome. Cool. Well, what shoes are you currently wearing? And yeah, let's why don't we start there? See what you tend to go toward.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, if you ask me, 2 years ago and 2 years from now, I'm betting the answer is going to be different, because the thing is, there's so much innovation in this, and the running space and everything has really evolved and changed in terms of what a shoe is. If you were to, and I actually work part time in a running store. I've been doing that for 4 years. So along with working with athletes for 13 years now, I've been doing that for 4 years, and just the innovation has been crazy. If you were to go back, not even that long ago, people were always trying to, like, make everybody run exactly the same, this ideal running form, make people who roll in not roll in and all that, and didn't really help with injury in any way. And so the big thing now is supporting what each person does, and as they change the shoes, that might change. So
Hmm.
if we went back 2 years ago, I was wearing a bunch of ultras, which are like your zero drop, wide toe box sort of shoe. And right now I'm running in, primarily for my easy runs and long runs, the A6 Nova Blast, because I just love the way that particular one feels. They come out with the next version. I might love it, I might not. And I think that's going to be the real big message with this is nothing can replace trying the shoes on, going,
Hmm.
trying it, see what actually feels right for you, because they're always going to make little tweaks. Sometimes that tweak between the last two versions of the Nova Blast that I'm wearing from Asics was very minor, but if you went back 3 ago, it would be night and day a different shoe. I didn't like that shoe at all. Now, if I'm going for a 20+ mile long run, that is my shoe. That is the one I'm going to. And it really does change with the time, what they're putting into it, and there's a lot of great things that are happening with it. So the biggest thing that I would recommend for everybody is, getting that one shoe that you could do for almost everything. If you're going to do, running, you want to get that daily trainer, that shoe that feels
Hmm.
great on you, that you can wear for, depending on your race distance. If you're doing a 5K, make sure you can get beyond race distance with it. If you're doing a marathon, make sure you're doing that for, you've worn it for long runs that are, 2, 3, 4 hours, and it still feels good on your foot. Because if it doesn't feel good at mile 1 or 2, or a little bit uncomfortable, it is not going to feel good down the
Hmm.
road. So what I usually tell people when they're coming in, if there's an athlete I'm working with or anything like that, if you're going to get one shoe, get that daily trainer. Don't mess around with anything fancy, like you've heard about these plated shoes, these racing flats, all these different things. Get a daily trainer, a shoe that can be in that, 140 to 150 price point is where most of those shoes are right now. A little bit more, you can get like 160, a little bit more cushion, but that is going to be your bread and butter, the shoe you're going to pull most of the time when you're going out for your long runs. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, the lifespan on those shoes is a little bit better. You're going to get 500 miles out of those shoes, and you just want comfort on a lot of these runs. When you're not looking to speed things up, you're not looking to, do anything that is especially fast. pull that
Mhm.
daily trainer. It's going to serve you right in about 80% of your runs. And in some people, that is going to be their only shoe. If you're looking to finish a marathon, a half marathon, your first 5K, and you're not really worried so much about speed, that is your shoe. Like that is the one. And then you might branch out and do some different things as you maybe are looking for maybe get a little bit more time goals. Maybe you're doing,
Mhm.
instead of running 3, 4 days a week or 2 days a week, whatever it is you're doing, if you start to add the amount of days and you start doing some more specific work, then you can add different tools to your toolbox. That's where you might pull a carbon plated or a nylon plated shoe. If you really start to get nuanced, you might have a higher, softer cushion, higher cushion, softer shoe for your longer, easy days. You might have a slightly lighter, less cushion shoe for, like, say, a tempo run, but not a plate. And then you've got maybe your race day shoes. So for me, my race day shoe right now is the A6 Metaspeed Sky, and I've had like 4 versions of that. That one has served me really, really well throughout the years. And what I typically do is whatever one is not the prime premier one for race day. So for Chicago, I've run one marathon and done one workout in it. That's all that shoe has had because I want it to be pretty fresh. When
Mhm.
it is worn out, that'll turn into my workout shoe. So then I'll get a new one, and that way I kind of cycle through it. But that's kind of how you want to treat it: is where are you in terms of your running journey? If you're looking to start your running journey, if you're looking to just run your general runs, try on a bunch of daily trainers, see what feels good for you, try it on, walk around in it, hopefully shop at a place that allows you to return it if it doesn't work out. But I
Mhm.
always tell people, what is comfortable on your foot, that is what you want to lean into. Your body is liking it for a reason. It shouldn't feel uncomfortable. We shouldn't try to make you run like Eliud Kipchoge or anything like that, or any of these professional marathoners. What feels good for you, that's the right shoe for you. And again, trying that on, going to a place where you can try on a bunch of things, but also going to a place where you can maybe talk to somebody about what your goals are. Those people in the store are going to have tried on all those shoes. Hopefully they've been at it for a while. And really importantly, making sure you're in the right size. And that might sound silly
Mhm.
because some people might have been in the same size shoe for the last 10 years. I almost guarantee you your shoe shot your shoe size changes over time, and each
Mhm.
of these versions fits a little bit differently. We went back 5, 6 years. I was wearing primarily men's 8.5, and now everything is a 9.5. Everything I wear is a 9.5. And your feet, they change over time, especially if you're getting into running. There's going to be a little swelling. You're also going to probably naturally like a little more space in there, but your feet do change over time. But not just necessarily grabbing one of those metal machines. They call them the Brannick machines, where you put one foot in, measure both your feet too. Your feet, I
Mhm.
guarantee you, are not the same size. I,
Mhm.
I, my right foot's a little longer than my left. That is super normal. Asymmetry in how we are is pretty common, and you're going to want to fit to that larger foot to make sure that you don't get things like black toenails. If you're in a shoe where you're fitting, but it's a little small when you're kind of hitting up against the front when you're running, if your foot is hitting it, your arches can kind of spasm, cause things up the kinetic chain like shin splints. All of those things, really making sure you're in a shoe that's comfortable and the right size. And, even if you're in one that, I've always been a 9 or whatever. See what the 9.5 feels like. If you're really down to, I really like this shoe, see what it feels like in a half a size bigger. See what it feels like in a half a size smaller. That's not typically the issue, but see what it feels like. And you should have about a half to a full thumbnail in front of your toe to the front of it. It shouldn't fit like a glove. Just like your shirt is going to move a little bit if it's the right size, there should
Mhm.
be some space in there. And the last thing you want, again, are black toenails, the shoe feeling tight, things happening with your arch and things like that because you're not in the right size. So my biggest suggestion for everybody is going, trying some things. Try that brand you've never tried before. Try on something that maybe not you necessarily, you know, heard somebody wearing it and working for them. It might not work for you, but just trying on a few things. If you have a place that can get you like scanned and actually, measure your foot electronically, that's going to be a really great benefit to you. But really trying on some things, what feels good for you, getting that one daily trainer, that is the key, getting that one that you really, really like. And that is probably going to change over time. And then don't mess around with these crazy plated shoes until, You're worried about performance. You're worried about, your time. And I mentioned too, those daily trainers last longer. A lot of times, those plated shoes are going to wear out in about 200 miles. So they're typically
Mm,
much more expensive. And their foam, it's a different type of foam than the EVA foam that's in a daily trainer. It wears out much, much quicker. It gets less springy. You're not getting the benefit out of it if you're putting a lot of just random miles on it. So I
mm,
cringe when I see people doing their easy runs and they're like, oh, I really want a fast, light shoes. Like, go out there and just deal with comfort when you're running, whatever it is, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Don't worry so much about the pace. Worry about the pace when you really want to turn it up and go fast. And those plated shoes too. There's some pretty good evidence that's come out that'll show that running in a plated shoe all the time, that springiness that you get from the carbon fiber plate or the nylon plate interacting with the foam, that spring is what really gives you the boost. Your body has that capacity too. There's that plyometric springy speed strength, elastic strength. You give that to yourself for free in every single run, your body will naturally lose that springiness because, you know, those things are calorie expensive. Our body's always trying to look for the most efficient way to do anything. You give it that
mhm,
spring for free, it's going to break down that its own natural springiness because you've given it to it. So there's a lot of reasons why you would want to save the plated shoes for those critical workouts that you're doing maybe once a week. Save them for race day. They're really expensive. They can definitely lose some of your training if you're doing all of your runs in that. And there is some more evidence that would say, especially if you're a little bit of a slower runner or if you're doing the runs in them all the time, they can lead to a little more injury because you are transferring more energy through your body. So for
mhm,
all those reasons, get that one trainer that feels great, you love it, you can wear it for hours in that run if you're training for something like that. And don't just say, "Oh, this is the most expensive shoe, it's the newest and latest and greatest racing shoe." Save that. That has its own purpose down the line. So that's the main takeaway that I have with shoes is what feels best to you is the one you're going to want to go to. And you're going to want to go to a place where you can really try on a bunch of different things. And the last point I'll make on that is if your shoe's over 6 months and you're a consistent runner, it's probably done. It may not have torn or worn out, but it's funny. I was actually just working with a gentleman today that was in a shoe that was updated at least 3 years ago, and he was training
mm,
for marathons. And that foam, about 500 miles, that's a really good. If you're running between 10 to 15 miles a week, that's about 6 months for most people. If you're
mm.
chewing away at 30, 40, 50 plus miles a week, that shoe is going to wear out a lot quicker. And that's where you might come into a shoe rotation. You have, a couple different options there, especially if you're running anything over 20, 25, 30 miles. You're running a lot. You're putting a lot of force into the ground. Make sure that you're keeping those shoes fresh. They're what keeps you from crashing into the ground each time when you're pushing up and falling. So, making sure those shoes are relatively new, and you can I always like to have my long run shoe and then just like my racing shoe, I said I turn into my workout shoe. I turn my long run shoe when it's not super great into my recovery run shoe. A little bit
Hmm,
shorter, little less time,
sure.
and that way I'm saving, that super great feeling for those workouts, those runs that do feel a little more challenging to get through. So that's the basic takeaway I would say on shoes in general.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I can remember, oh God, when I graduated grad school, when I had, money at that point, of course, you're probably in running shoes you had for a whole 40, how many
Right.
years, college and grad school, and walking into a running store and just being like, oh, this is amazing, fit me to a shoe that works. And I was always Asics and then switched to Brooks. And I tried to go back to Asics and just switch to different brands, and I just cannot. Brooks just feel good, so I just keep. Why mess with it, right? So I think having that rotation, I rotate between two different shoes. I don't have like a tempo shoe mainly because I'm just not, just not where I am right now. Um, but that's definitely something to chat about in the future with you for sure. The carbon plated ones, people ask about those a lot coming in, on the rehab side. Um, I just don't, I've never used them myself. So I, tend to try to connect them with a guy that works in one of the running stores that like knows a lot about those shoes. And just have him kind of talk on those. But I do know people have gotten injured from, certain shoes, whether it's the shoe or something else. But sometimes I get someone out of a shoe or out of an orthotic they've put in there they don't need, and their pain goes away. So yeah, I think making sure it's the right shoe for you for sure. What feels good. But yeah, I definitely send people over to, the specialist to talk about shoes because there's a lot out there. And I think even on the rehab side with running, but also strength training, I encourage people not to strength train in their running shoes,
Oh
um, get into something where they can feel the ground, right? Because running shoes typically have a lot more cushion to them, which is great for running and, putting miles on your legs with some help. But yeah, that's one of the things I educate people on is having a shoe for your strength days, having your shoes that you like for your running days, and then make sure you keep those separate, right? Because me myself, I love like if if I try to stand in a running shoe all day, I just like I don't like it. It makes my and like I don't feel good in it, right? Because I'm used to running in it. Um, so yeah, that definitely having that separation, of the different shoes. Um, oh, what else? Is there anything and racing flats too? I come across those more with your cross country, your shorter, your obviously your high school athletes, but also your 5K, 10K. People tend to race in those. I don't have recommendations for those. Again, it's just educating and knowing more about them. I could imagine too with racing flats, it's what feels good for someone,
yeah.
would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And the racing flats, those have gotten to be a much more niche sort of thing because a lot of times people will even take their cross country spikes as long as they're not like the ones that have the hard plasticky bottom. And you can
Hmm.
turn that into a racing flat. They actually have like screws that have like flats on the bottom that you can put into that hole where the spike would normally go. And some of those spikes, like the Nike Dragonfly, has a nylon plate in it. Some of them have carbon fiber
Oh,
plates where they
interesting.
can turn it into a flat. So like if you have a course that's especially has some concrete, especially here in Florida, like our cross country courses are not like the rest of the world where they're all hills and things like that. We have a lot of ones where you cross over on concrete and that. So those ones you would take the spikes out and use it. But yeah, same sort of thing. And those are again much more nuanced. Those are going to be again your probably more even like your middle school athletes that maybe we don't want to do
Hmm.
a spike, or maybe they're even, a lot of their meets are going to be on a hard surface versus a rubber track where the spikes won't dig into it anyway. Much more niche, much more nuanced. So you're going to have to go to probably, if that's sort of someone's goal, they're going to really want to go to a bigger running store too to try some of those on. But yeah, same sort of thing. If you've got someone that's new to it, you don't need the fanciest things. Your general trainers are going to do really well. And then when you're looking at performance, then you might want to try a few of those things on. And yeah, talking to an expert, like you said, that's great because these things change and evolve very quickly. Some of these
Hmm.
some of these spikes and super shoes are illegal in certain races too because of things like stack height, and things like that. So you're going to want to talk to somebody who definitely knows some of that too if it's your first time getting into it. But same sort of thing. If it doesn't feel good on your foot, it's not going to feel great a mile into your race. That is for sure.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And you don't want to be halfway there and,
Yeah,
just want to rip the shoe off, right?
right.
Um,
Exactly.
Yeah, so shoe is definitely obviously yeah, that's the biggest thing I look at when people come in is size. Make sure you're in that right size. Like you said, I'll take that insole out and have people stand on it just so they can see whether their foot fits, into the
Mhm.
shoe. Um, and the length as well. And then I'll also look at the bottom of the shoe too for especially if someone's having issues, look to see kind of if it's a shoe they've worn a lot, where they're wearing down,
Mhm.
right? If they're only on the outside of their feet, right? Then they're or on one side or the other, that tells me what might be contributing to some of what's going on. And then we would address that based on like foot, what we need to do with their feet or hips or what's kind of playing into it. So
Right.
that's kind of the stuff I look at is how they're wearing in their shoe. Um, so yeah, shoes. Anything more about shoes that you think be good for
Yeah,
everyone to know?
and you brought up a little bit too, the idea of inserts. They work for some people and they don't work for other people, right?
Hmm.
Most of your performance inserts, obviously, if you get something from a doctor that says wear it for this reason or whatever, that's a totally different discussion. Most of these more performance inserts, there's a bunch of different brands that you can try. Again, usually what I have people do is if I think that it could help because they're flexing or they're having some kind of, shin pain or, plantar fasciitis sort of pain, it's like, let's put it in the shoe. If it doesn't feel good, we're not going to do it because if it doesn't make it feel better, it's not going to feel
Yeah.
better when you're running in it. Same sort of thing, very generally. They're good for some people. I personally really like them. I don't like
Mhm.
wearing them in all of my shoes now, but I tend to have issues with plantar fasciitis. I have super
Mhm.
flexible arches. Same person that has the same scan as me might put the same one I like in their shoe and think that it feels horrible. So same thing with the foundation with shoes. It never hurts to try them in the store, see if they feel good. If they feel better, it might be a conversation. If they don't feel better, don't get them. They're not going to feel better, as you're running through. But that's kind of like the big things with shoes. I know that we had discussed a little bit, about like some different things we can use to warm people up, or like rollers and things like that, that we haven't talked about yet. But that would be, I think, the next sort of thing that people could really look to have is once you've got the foundation, your shoes, and if you're going to do an insert or something like that done, then you might look to, if you're having problems with like, shins or anything like that, are you doing a good warm up routine? Don't jump right into it. You're going to want to activate those areas. But if you've seen like those foam rollers, you've got the big ones that you can actually lean on and put the force of your body onto, or like handheld ones that you can use. Those are
Mhm.
really good for warming up those areas, activating the muscles, but also helping with redistributing blood, helping with some of that recovery, get some massage going on there. So that can be part of a before, an after, long after, later on in the evening when you're maybe doing a little bit of stretching or anything like that to get the blood flowing, help with that. So the rollers are really good for that. And then kind of a little bit more secondarily, I would never really say that like compression socks and sleeves are the first thing that you would go to. If you have that, it's kind of more of a down the line. And the evidence on compression is kind of more mixed when you're talking about like performance. The way that the compression is meant to work is it's supposed to help with limiting some of those micro vibrations that are happening as you're stepping and the muscles are vibrating, and that can be fatiguing.
Mhm.
Definitely, if you are going to wear them for running, you can use either the sleeve or the full sock or anything like that. Either one works. If you're doing it for more redistributing blood flow and having blood not pool at the extremities while you're not running, you're not going to want to use a sleeve because the sleeve is actually going to cause more blood pooling at the end. So sleeves should only be used while you're running or whatever your
Mhm.
exercise is, where your heart rate is elevated to where it can fight against it. But if you're going to use the compression is great for things like limiting, blood clotting if you're going to be on a long flight. That's something that's really big. There's a
Mhm.
medical
Mhm.
reason why some people might do it too if they're having issues with varicose veins and things like that. But for performance, it can anecdotally give people a little bit less of that fatigue. Just
Mhm.
making sure that you're doing it. It's not going to be the end all and be all. It's not typically the first answer to it, but the compression can definitely help with these areas if you tend to have really tight calves, really, issues with shin splints in the muscles. If it's shin splint in the bone, it's not going to do anything. If it's the bone hurting, definitely that might be more of a medical discussion because you don't want that to become something worse. But if we're
Yep.
talking about yeah, muscles and things like that, it can help anecdotally with that compression, and that can be something to add to a good rolling and warm up routine if you're having that issue. And if you want to wear it outside of your actual runs, again, full sock, not sleeve. The sleeve is going to cause more blood pooling. But yeah, again, this is all based on if it's in the muscle, some support in that area. Like I said, if you're having pain in your actual bones and it's one side, small area pain,
Mhm.
that's an issue you're going to want to talk to with a medical professional, because that could be stress reactiony or even worse going on there. But in the muscle, that's where these areas are designed to help. The rollers, either the big ones or the small ones, they actually have those rollers that like you can get like both sides going if you've seen them,
Hmm.
where you actually pull them apart and then they kind of compress and they roll back and forth
Oh, okay.
on
That
it. So
feels
that's
good.
something else you can do. They take a little bit of strength to get going, but that's another thing that you can do with it. If you're dealing with any of these pains for a long period of time, obviously, go to a physical therapist who knows what they're doing, like Divergent. Obviously, have a conversation with your medical professional if it's something that's been dealing it for a while. But that's the general takeaway I would say with those more ancillary things like your rollers and your compression.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on compression, or all of that, because I always when someone's reaching out to me that I've seen, or maybe someone who just is reaching out to ask a question, when they start trying to add stuff because something hurts, I'm like, okay, well, let's see what's going on before we start throwing things at it, right? Because it might be that you need something a little bit more. You make sure we're making sure everything's safe, that you can continue doing what you're doing. I think foam rolling's great. It's kind of, whether that person likes it or not. Some people just do not like a foam roller because they find it uncomfortable, or a roller. Um, so any of that stuff, people ask about all kinds of, like, I'm trying to think, like, the, Theragun, all those things that help for like recovery and compression. That's what I've like looked up more myself, just because I went through varicose vein procedures. And that's when I realized I needed to get treatment, is when I was trying to run last year, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best compression sleeve. And I'm like, okay, I just need to figure out what's causing this.
Yeah.
But I remember just looking up stuff, and it is like people go back and forth on compression, of whether it's really something that you need, for recovery, to how much does it help. So um, it can't hurt, people like wearing those things,
Right.
fine. But yeah, I do agree. Know the difference between the sleeve and the sock, and why you need it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, and go try them on. I know some of the running stores they'll size you and make sure like you're not in something that's too tight, or something that's not going to do anything for you. So,
Absolutely.
um, so, sorry, my son walked in the room here. If you hear all this extra noise,
No, no
um,
worries at all.
so yeah, I mean, that was interesting, the shoe, to get your thoughts on the shoes, especially with, the training and every, how you would, like, I need to go watch this myself to like take notes on how you rotate your shoes.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and there's all these different things too. We obviously the running watches have become a huge thing. And I same sort of thing, trying it on, what works for you. I had used Garmin for probably 10 years, and a week ago I got my first Chorus watch, and I am really, really loving this. And it really kind of depends on what you like out of the watch. What I really like about this one right now personally is that it's really giving me more of the terminology that I would use, things like VO2 max versus, zone 5, zone 2, things like that, that are a little bit less
mhm,
specific across the board. But
sure,
yeah, these different things, again, you want to try those things out, make sure that you're getting the one that's right for you, because you can go and get a fancy watch that's $1,000 that's meant to be a triathlon watch, and can take you through hiking, trails and things like that that you would never use, where the in a lot of the cases these watches are so sophisticated, those entry level watches are so great that you can, most people in terms of that are just doing running, that's going to be a really good thing for them. But I think it really does just come down to, in all these cases, trying things on, see what works
mhm,
for you with this. But yeah, that's kind of the main things that most runners are going to want to look at. What is the foundation of shoes? Maybe an
mhm,
insert. What's going on in terms of like a warm up and recovery, making sure that you've got a good watch, make sure that it's something that you can actually like track what you're doing, make sure you can see things. And all these watches do heart rates based on wrist, which is not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was a couple years ago when you had to get more specialty ones to even get a heart rate. But those are some of those valuable things that you'd want to know. Far you run, pace, things like that. They're all going to do that now.
sure. Yeah, no, I think I'm all about minimal and what feels light. I have my Garmin too, and
Yeah.
I go based on like, okay, this feels good. It's like it's not there, I know we're around the same age, so like when racing, when we were probably in high school, it was like, did you wear a watch? I don't know. I don't remember if I wore a watch at all, or you just went based on how you felt, right? Like your
It,
coach told you to
It's
stay here with conversation pace, or you need to go fast and pick up the pace here. So I
yeah,
still try to pull a lot of that forward with me, like stay minimal as much as I can, you know.
because you can
Um,
obsess over it. You can really these are great, but they can obsess over it, and you can get 20 pairs of shoes and all these different fancy things. But yeah, definitely get what really do you need? Really kind of having that discussion with yourself, because yeah, more is not always better, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, especially if you're coming off of an injury, sometimes the watch can just push you more than you needed to push you. I don't know, mine already has a plan for me and tells you what to do every other day, and half time I'm ignoring it, just
Yes,
because you need to listen to how you feel, and not try to rush things, Um, so so great to have just, some things for everyone to kind of keep in mind as you think about what you have on your wrists and what you have on your feet.
yes,
Um, well, there's much more that we could talk about, but I say maybe we leave that for another time so we
sounds
can
great.
let you, start to get ready. You're heading out to Chicago. Is it tomorrow?
Thursday,
Thursday?
so 2 days from now.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Hmm.
So soon.
Yes.
So yeah, but we can touch on, everything else, that you would typically wear. Maybe after Chicago, we can see how things go and then, see kind of what you did for, your hydration, your fueling and everything like that.
Sound, sounds great. And then
Then go from there.
probably just like what you do after the race too, because yeah, that's as important to your training plan as what you did during it. There's that's a very key aspect of it, is that transition period and making sure that you're taking care of things so you can roll into what your next race is.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Kyle, and
Pleasure.
good luck.
Thank you.